In a year where Canadian businesses and families have faced too much disruption and uncertainty, they shouldn't have to shoulder another blow. We will not leave them behind.
This entire video is dedicated to one topic, and that's the Air Canada flight attendant strike, because it is absolutely spiraling out of control. Thousands, dozens of thousands of flight attendants have now been on what they are calling a silent strike because of, a myriad of different reasons. They are unionized. The union decided with like 99% rate that everyone is going to go on strike. And so here they are, and it's causing a lot of delays, a lot of cancellations, and Air Canada is literally publicly shaming their employees for doing so. Now, for those who don't know a whole lot, because there's like so much mixed information as to why they're even striking, and it's just getting crazy out there. Air Canada flight attendants, the entire air industry, the entire airline industry in Canada is just so underpaid and like borderline kind of slave labor. It's really grotesque. We're going to highlight just a couple of things. I'm sure there's like a whole checklist of things of why they are striking and what they're looking for. But the main things is that Air Canada flight attendants, when they go to board people on a plane. So, when you go to your wing, you go through security, you go to your gate 32B or whatever it is. And there's like a flight attendant sitting behind a little podium doing announcements, paging 32B people. We will be boarding in 10 minutes, right? Okay. They aren't paid for that. Not yet at that point. In fact, people have to wonder, when are actual flight attendants beginning to get paid? And to kind of chalk it up into easy terms, when the brakes are released off of the plane and the pay ends when the brakes are released back on or put back onto the plane. So when the plane disconnects from the accordion little walkway and the brakes are released and the plane is ready to actually go, and then when it lands and the brakes are put back into place, that's when the pay starts and that's when the pay ends. That's like the simplest way to really understand when they start and stop getting paid. But there's like a whole shit ton of work, pre-boarding checks and so much PR and things that they're doing like hours and hours beforehand and after, and all of that goes unpaid. And you don't find this out until you are actually on the job. So there's lots of sides to this, right? There's a side, well, why would you work for a company where you know that you're not getting paid to do those things? And that's like a valid thing to kind of say. But people don't know what they're getting themselves into. In fact, oftentimes when you go to sign up to be a flight attendant, it can say $30 an hour. But out of 8 hours or 7 hours of an actual shift, you're only paid for about 4 of those hours. And so that's not something that you know beforehand unless you've spoken to a flight attendant, unless you've been around the scene for quite some time. And that's what you find out after being on the job for quite some time. And now Air Canada is extremely vocal about it. So what's all the fuss? Like, how is this spiraling out of control? Well, the government of Canada historically just says, okay, you're going to strike. Let's sit down at the negotiating table and see if we can solve this. But they're not doing that. The government of Canada just announced today, the Liberal government of Canada just announced today that, hey, we know your strike is official as of this morning, Saturday, but we're ordering you to go back to work. Yeah, so now you understand why we're making a dedicated video about this, because it is absolutely insane. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do really want to encourage y'all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. I want to start off with the public shaming that Air Canada is doing, because this is just insane, man. Air Canada, on their official X account, is saying, this was yesterday, as of 8 p.m. EDT on August 15th, this is the operational impact from the COOP strike. Total flights canceled, 623. Total people impacted, just over 100,000. Now, this has never been public stats when Air Canada is at fault. So when you go to board your plane and there's like mechanical issues or delays, they don't publicly state, hey, today we've had 32 mechanical issues across all of our planes, which has impacted 17,000 people. That's not a thing that they do, but they're using now their voice and the momentum from all this to publicly shame their employees, which is kind of fucked up. So to understand a little bit more context as to what's going on with this strike, we're going to take a look at this this new updated video.
Hey, I'm Mark Carcasole filling in. You are watching extensive coverage here on CBC News Network of the Air Canada strike. It's now just over 7 hours old, but it's already having a crippling effect. The national carrier's fleet is largely grounded across the country, leaving travelers' plans up in the air at the height of the summer season. More than 10,000 flight attendants have walked off the job with contract talks at a stalemate and the deadline passed. Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu is urging the two sides to get back to the negotiating table ASAP, opting for now against backing an Air Canada request to send the matter to binding arbitration. Now, in a statement, the airline says it, quote, deeply regrets the impact of the strike, estimating it will disrupt hundreds of flights and about 130,000 customers for every day that the strike lasts. For its part, the union is setting up picket lines at airports right across the country, and it will be providing an update in Toronto at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, which we will carry here live for you. Now, the strike has the potential to be felt in every single part of this country, and Canadian travelers around the world, travelers from all places around the world, could potentially have their plans upended. It has huge repercussions for the economy as well as individual Canadians. We have you covered with reaction and analysis as well as tips and advice if you or a family member or friend are caught up in the job action. CBC's Linda Ward leads off our coverage this hour. She joins us now from Pearson International Airport just outside Toronto. Linda, what's the reaction on the picket line there this morning?
Yeah, the picket's just being set up here within the last hour or so at Terminal 1 at Toronto Pearson. We're hearing chanting for fair pay and holding signs that say no contract, no takeoff. Well, we're certainly seeing that here today with all Air Canada and Air Canada Rouge flights being suspended. I have some spokespeople here I want to bring in now who've just arrived here at the picket line. Certainly not what you want to be seeing, I'm sure, this morning. But what's your reaction to the fact that we have gotten now to full strike action?
Good morning. Thank you. It's absolutely heartbreaking that our employer would rather ground their aircrafts than come to the table and present its employees a fair contract.
Shannon Elliott, you've been a flight attendant and now spokesperson for CUPE, another flight attendant here, Lillian. Can you just explain to me sort of, we know that Air Canada wanted binding arbitration, or the minister wanted binding arbitration. The union declined that. Why do you think that strike action is going to get you a better deal than what arbitration would have accomplished for the union?
So arbitration generally would give us the status quo, and the entire point of what we're trying to do is break the status quo. We have an archaic pay system where we don't get paid until the aircraft is moving, and it's just not right. And 90% of Canadians support that. They support that we should be getting paid when we're at work. So binding arbitration.
To put it into context, right? When you go to your wing 32B or whatever the hell it says at your airport, and you've got the flight attendant standing behind the podium, the one that checks your boarding pass and checks your passport and asks you to remove your glasses so they can identify you through your photo, right? Like that stuff. When there's delays, or even when they're doing that part of the job, they're not getting paid, dude. That's insane. Like, imagine McDonald's employees taking your orders and they're not getting paid to do that. Like, that's insanity to support employees who are representing a company and they're dealing with the general public. Like, they're directing us, can you go here? Can you go here? We're going to check your passports. They're private citizens. They're not even on the clock when they're checking our passports and our boarding pass. That sounds insane to me. I don't know why. That just sounds insane. It sounds like it's Air Canada trying to pinch pennies and not pay their people properly.
It's going to reinforce the status quo, and that's not where we're at today.
We're not anywhere today. We're out on the picket line from what we understand. Neither party is at the table. Is that your understanding as well?
We're here until we have a fair contract presented to us from our union.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us today. We'll let you get back to the picket line. We know Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu released a statement saying that she met with both parties and said that they need to get back to the table, calling it unacceptable. So little progress has been made. Air Canada, for their part, is saying that they are ready to negotiate as soon as the union is. But from what we understand, again, neither side at the table, at least at last update that we had. Air Canada telling passengers today, if you do not have a confirmed flight with another airline, do not come to the airport here, because there are so many people. They are trying to rebook. What we understand as well from passengers, those phone lines that they're telling people to go to are quite busy, as well as people deal with these canceled travel plans, Mark.
So it's interesting that they're talking about Patty Hajdu, because after this news clip was made, Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu actually commented in a solo press conference about the strike, and get this, literally said, okay, well, that's enough of the strike. We are ordering, the Canadian government is ordering all of the flight attendants to get their lazy ass back to work. That's what she says. It's insanity. You can't protest in this country. You can't strike for fair wages in this country. What the fuck? I'm sorry for swearing, but what the hell is going on with Canada right now?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here today on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. After 8 months of negotiations and weeks of intensive mediation, Air Canada and the Canadian Union of Public Employees flight attendants were unable to reach a tentative agreement. The government firmly believes that the best deals are reached by the parties at the bargaining table, and we will never stop believing that. But when parties put in the hard work at the table, Canadians are better off as a result. And despite resolution on a number of key items, this dispute will not be resolved quickly enough. And the impact of the work stoppage at Air Canada that began early this morning is already being felt by travelers. This is causing significant harm and has negative impacts on Canadians and the Canadian economy. It impedes the movement of passengers and critical cargo, such as pharmaceuticals, and it strands thousands of Canadians abroad, making it extremely costly and sometimes impossible to book new flights. Canadians have already sacrificed a lot in this uncertain economy, and this labor disruption is adding to their worries and financial burdens. As Minister of Labour, I have exercised my authorities under Section 107 of the Canadian Labour Code to direct the Canada Industrial Relations Board to order the parties to resume and continue their operations and duties in order to secure industrial peace and protect the interests of Canada, Canadians, and the economy. I've also asked the board to assist the parties in reaching a settlement of the outstanding terms of their collective agreement by imposing final and binding arbitration, and to extend the terms of the existing collective agreement until a new one is determined by the arbitrator. Flight attendants play a critical role in getting Canadians to where they need to go safely, and they deserve to be compensated and treated fairly at all times. My job as Minister of Labour isn't to take sides during labour disputes. It's to give the parties the tools that they need to reach a fair and timely agreement while keeping the best interests of Canadians at heart. And that's why I intervened today. Canada's economy has seen unprecedented attacks on trade and significant tariff actions. Amid these challenges, Canadians have been stepping up for months to support their friends and their neighbours and their local communities. In a year where Canadian businesses and families have faced too much disruption and uncertainty, they shouldn't have to shoulder another blow. We will not leave them behind. This is not a decision that I have taken lightly, but the potential for immediate negative impact on Canadians and our economy is simply too great. Labor disruption impedes the movement of passengers and critical cargo. Canadians rely on air travel every day, and its importance cannot be understated. Many Canadians need to travel to care for loved ones abroad or deal with critical life events, such as funerals or adoptions. The shipments of critical goods, such as pharmaceuticals and organ tissue, should continue to reach their destinations. And we believe that hardworking Canadians who've been saving up for family vacations should be able to enjoy their well-deserved and planned time off. Now is not the time to take risks with our economy. A work stoppage would cause thousands of Canadians to be stranded abroad and across this country, and this is simply unacceptable.
So when is the time to strike?
Last year, Canadians paid a high price when multiple key sectors went on strike. Inaction at the bargaining table had a massive impact on Canadian families and our entire economy. These parties have had months at the negotiation table. They've had support through the Federal Mediation Service, and they have been unable to cross the finish line. Arbitration is the most stable way to conclude this process for Canadians while allowing parties to reach a deal. If we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7, Canadians need to have confidence in the industries that serve them. Thank you.
First of all, we will never have the strongest economy in the G7. That's just not going to happen. And second of all, the Canadian government, the Liberals, keep deciding when you can protest or strike and where you can do it for the protest or the strike and how you can do the protest or the strike. And you're seeing this time and time and time again. This is sad. So when, Patty Haju, is it the right time for the Air Canada flight attendants to use their democratic right as union members to strike? Please let us know.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to questions now. One question, one follow-up. We'll start in the room. Jeremy Charon, CTV.
Good morning, Minister, or good afternoon. The government has now stepped in countless labor disputes. There are experts who point to, this having an impact on and advantaging really employers in a negotiation. Is there a concern about undermining the labor system? And are you confident that workers' rights are still being respected?
They are not being respected.
I think that it's very important to reiterate my first statement, which is that the best deals are arrived at the table, not just because this is good for workers, but because it's good for stability and peace within the organization. Strikes are very disruptive to the culture of the organization. They're very expensive for the members who are often experiencing significant loss of pay, and they're very challenging for the corporations who are losing revenue and reputation every single day. Having said that, in this particular instance, we do believe that it's very important that we establish industrial peace and that we focus on the growing cost to Canadians, Canadian families and Canadian small businesses. So this is a tool that allows for arbitration. There are many items that have been resolved between the two parties, and this will give them an opportunity to resolve the remaining items.
Thank you. My follow-up is on impacted passengers. Should Air Canada be liable to fully reimburse passengers who've had canceled flights or, paying their full way for a replacement flight?
Listen, I don't want to speculate on the impact to Air Canada and what their corporate practices are. I know they're deeply concerned about the passengers that are stranded around the globe and here in Canada.
No, they're not. They don't care. Air
last
Canada
night,
doesn't care.
Speaking with the parties, in fact, that was one of the first items that the employer raised, was the work they're putting into trying to ensure that whoever is calling into their call centers has somebody on the other end. It is important, though, that we keep the safety, security, and financial security of Canadians first and foremost, and it would be my expectation that we all work together to get people home.
Next question will be Kyle Dugan, Canadian Press.
Hi, Minister. Thank you for taking our questions. Can you tell us what changed between yesterday and today that you weren't willing to step in yesterday, but today you've come to the conclusion that clearly something needs to be done? So could you just give us a little bit of insight into your thought process and how you weighed the policy options ahead of before you?
I think what changed between yesterday and today was that I asked the parties to meet with me collectively together in the same meeting. I met with Air Canada and with the union representatives, as well as the national president of CUPE. We talked through what was remaining in terms of the perspectives of the parties. The parties committed to staying at the table throughout the night, which they did. There was an offer tabled by the employer, and the talks broke down. And so it is clear that the parties are no longer, are not any closer to resolving some of the key issues that remain, and they will need help with an arbitrator.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, I'm wondering, how long will it take before things kind of start to return back to normal and some of these flights come back online? Do you have a sense of that, how long the labor board process will?
The CIRB is an independent body, and they will review and receive statements from the impacted parties, and then they will make their determination about whether they will intervene. And so that will take an according amount of time. Don't want to speculate because it is a process, but in general, sometimes it can take 24 to 48 hours for the board to complete that work. Again, that's a question for the board. However, Air Canada has said it could take between 5 to 10 days for regular services to resume. And again, I think that's a question for Air Canada in terms of their complex operations that one needs to happen for full resumption of services.
I think that the Air Canada stock is likely to tank after this. I mean, this is absurd. This is more proof and more evidence that the more the Liberal government gets involved in private businesses, the worse the outcomes become for the everyday Canadians. We have a democratic right in Canada to freedom of assembly, to protest, and for union strikes. It's literally there to protect workers. This is absurd. Imagine you go to your job, your 8-hour shift or 10 hours at work or 12 hours, whatever it is that you're doing, and half of it or almost half of it is unpaid work where you're actually working. You're having to do checks on the airplane before flight attendants can allow anybody on the plane. They do their pre-boarding checks. They go and they check every single oxygen mask, every single life raft, inflatable life raft, to see if it's, if it's still intact or if it's been punctured. Like, they do all of these things and it's all unpaid. And they're also directing us, the general public, onto where to go. They're checking our boarding passes, looking at our sensitive information like our passports, and it's all unpaid. That's freaking bananas. I cannot believe. I can't say that I'm fully surprised, but at the same time, I'm extremely shocked and disappointed in this government, man. This is the state of Canada right now. This shouldn't even be politicized. Air Canada is a private company. They're publicly traded on the stock market, right? On the Toronto Stock Exchange. I mean, yeah, they used to be like a crown corporation, and from time to time, they get bailed out by the Liberal government financially, and now they're being bailed out by the Liberal government for mandating all the workers to go back to work. But this is just insanity. Like, this is why you have such a strong voice advocating for less government. Remember, like, that federal campaign that just happened where the Conservatives were saying we need less government? Well, this is a prime example as to why we need less government. This is a negotiation between a private company, like a publicly traded company that has no real affiliation to the government, and individual Canadian citizens that work there. Oh, it's so disheartening to see this, man. Our government just treats us like absolute crap.
Marina von Stackelberg, CBC.
Hi, Minister. Unions are taking your government to court over your really unprecedented use of Section 107 of the Labor Code, which gives you the unilateral power to essentially, as you're doing today, order striking workers back to work. The unions say this is unconstitutional, that it violates the right to strike. Why does your government continue to use this Section 107?
Well, actually, just recently, I think the CIRB affirmed that in one of the recent disputes, the use of 107 was constitutional. And of course, I know there are a number of pieces of litigation. But listen, in today's decision, this is about industrial peace and the safety of Canadians. Of course, any deal is best if it's arrived at between the parties. But, as we can see, and as as I believe that some of you are reporting on, there are a number of extremely difficult situations and increasingly dire situations that Canadians are facing. And we believe that the Industrial Relations Board will help these two parties conclude their negotiations on some key items.
experts that I've spoken to about the use of 107.
Every single time you land at another airport at your destination and the plane goes right up to the gate and they turn the brakes on and now the plane is docked, the accordion little boardwalk comes over and attaches to your plane and the whole thing gets depressurized properly. Airline employees are no longer paid from that moment on. So when they're standing there, the pilots or the flight attendants, have a great day. Thank you for Air Canada. Have a great day. Have a great day. Oh, sir, can I help you with your bag? Oh, ma'am, do you need help getting off of the plane? Oh, sir, you left something there. Oh, ma'am, this and that. Have a great day. That's all from the goodness of their heart, dude. That they're not getting paid for that. Like that's bananas. That's bananas.
Say that the government's repeated use of this is poisoning negotiations because companies believe that they can kind of bargain to an impasse and then the government will step in and prevent a strike from happening. Why did you choose to use 107 so quickly here? I think this is the fastest use of it I've seen. Is your government anti-union?
I
Yes,
absolutely reject the notion that our government is anti-union. In fact, under the previous Liberal government, we considerably strengthened the Canada Labour Code. We banned the use of replacement workers, and we stood side by side with unions in terms of supporting their work, not only in labor negotiations, but also in training and recruiting new members. And so this work will continue. We believe that unions are an essential part of a healthy and growing economy. However, in a case like this, where multiple efforts have been made to conclude an agreement that satisfies both parties, and it is clear that they are at an impasse, it is very clear they need some help in arbitrating the final items.
No.
We're not going to take.
No. That's the whole point is you have the freedom of assembly and the freedom to express how you desire within the confines of the law. And the government, the Liberal government, keeps overreaching and abusing their powers, abusing their position as like, we are going to play God in this country, in this democratic country, and we're just going to wave a wand and say, you're not allowed to do these things, which you are clearly allowed to do. And I think that there is going to be an insanely large lawsuit from the union, all the flight attendants that are affected by this, towards the Liberal government. And it's going to come, unfortunately, at taxpayers' expense. They're probably going to get several $1 million, and every single flight attendant is probably going to get a shit ton of pay. And there should be ridicule involved in that pay because this is ridiculous. This is so shameful from the Liberal government and from what Air Canada is doing too, right? I mean, whatever, like that's an employee-employer thing. But what the government is doing is just freaking disgraceful. So I kind of want to pass the question off to you. How do you feel about this? Now, this is being overly politicized, right? What was supposed to be a very inconvenient union strike. I know a lot of people have very strong opinions about the Air Canada strike. Oh, whatever, unions are the worst. People think that, and just get back to work, or what you signed up for when you got that job, which now we're knowing is not true because they did not know that they would be working and only getting paid for approximately half or ish of what they were working. That's not in the contract at all. So how do you feel about this? Do you support the Liberals' decision, the government, of forcing everybody back to work? Or do you think that they should be allowed to express their democratic right and have a strike? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe. I'll see you later. Bye for now.